Good afternoon, wrestling fans. Tonight is WWE's Monday Night Raw flagship program, the 3-hour extravaganza that a lot of people think lasts way too long and hasn't been that great recently. But after the Royal Rumble, there is a lot of change on the horizon, and I've got to say, I'm quite excited again to see what they can actually make happen. That said, SmackDown was a bit lacking on Friday, so hopefully that'll be back on the up and up, but it depends who is where, because we have had a lot of things happen at the Royal Rumble that we need to cover. It affects SmackDown in many ways. There's possibilities of Edge when it comes to SmackDown. There is, of course, possibilities of Seth Rollins when it comes to SmackDown. So there are a lot of things that could happen and a lot to cover in this here WWE Raw review, the Becky Lynch show, because I'm pretty sure Becky Lynch is going to be on SmackDown, but we might as well celebrate her while we still have her. I am Tom Colohue. Thank you to anyone who joins or watches this on catch up as the room starts to fill up and questions start to come in. If you're watching on Twitch, please remember to follow. If you're watching on YouTube, please remember to click like and subscribe as well. That helps me grow. I'm going to jump in from the off with the Royal Rumble last night. Now, for those of you who watched, we had a 7-hour long live stream. A lot of people dipped in and out. I completely respect that. It was a very long stream covering everything that happened with the WWE Royal Rumble. I am going to get to comments and things just in a moment, but first I do want to highlight what happened at the Royal Rumble. So for anyone who doesn't already know, we had an opening match between Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, and Charlotte Flair and Asuka for the WWE Women's Tag Team titles, and due to the interference of Lacey Evans, which would come into play later in the night as well, we had Charlotte Flair getting beaten, actually losing a match for Charlotte, which is unusual. Usually she manages to overcome these things, so it's nice how they built it. And Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler are once again the women's tag team champions. This was my prediction for this match. I do think whatever the plan was to have tag team champions of Charlotte Flair and Asuka, it has not come to pass. Asuka has been doing something completely different with Alexa Bliss. Charlotte has been doing something completely different with Lacey Evans. The two have not actually really acted as tag team champions, or at least it doesn't feel that way to me personally. Let me know if you think differently. In addition to that, we had Drew McIntyre prevail over Goldberg. That will play into the Raw preview because it looks like we won't be seeing much Goldberg after this. It was a very conclusive win, but Goldberg does still have one more match on his contract for this year. Imagine how much he's getting paid for 2 matches, totaling about 5 minutes in total. Interesting stuff. Sasha Banks retained over Carmella in what looked like about as clean a win as you could get. Reginald was involved slightly, but never really negatively impacted Carmella. It seemed as clean as you like, and this feud is definitely over with what happened in the Royal Rumble. The Women's Royal Rumble was won by Bianca Belair. This again was my pick. So far, all of my picks have come true for the Royal Rumble, but I almost didn't believe it was going to happen for Bianca because they were definitely building her. You could see with what was going on with Bayley, they were just trying to showcase Bianca Belair and say, look how good this person is. Bayley was in the match pretty much from the beginning, and I say pretty much she was number one. And she was heavily involved as that ring general, making sure people hit all their spots. There was a few shaky bits of camera work, and there were some really good moments in this Rumble. Some good team reunions, particularly confusion between Billie Kay and Peyton Royce and Ruby Riott and Jillian Hall. So there was a couple of interesting names. I think they did really well with it. There was a couple of names that people expected. Trish Stratus, for example, who did not appear in the Royal Rumble. I think people got a little bit overhyped, and I'll come back to that in the men's Royal Rumble as well. Roman Reigns retained as clean as you get in a last man standing match. He would have lost due to a handcuff spot, but managed to throw the ref into a piece of scenery, essentially. And then a second ref replaced him and refused to count on the basis that they couldn't get the handcuffs off. So awkward botch, made the whole thing a bit confusing, but then it was a quick finish after that with a guillotine that got the win for Roman, who retains. And it looks like this feud of Kevin Owens is well and truly done now. But then we have the question of what's next for Roman, which is a fair question. And finally, the men's Royal Rumble, the one I did not get right, the only one. Edge wins the Royal Rumble. Edge now has the opportunity to go on to the main event of WrestleMania. That is everything that happened at the Royal Rumble. There were also 2 title changes to the 24/7 Championship, but the less said about them, the better. Let's see who we've got. Manny says, hello, welcome, Manny, glad to see you. Anand Vaswani, welcome to yourself. Where was Keith Lee? He was the initial favorite to win the Rumble. He definitely wasn't in the match. The I think people are assuming that it's a COVID positive, pardon me, because his partner Mia Yim has confirmed being COVID positive. So that is what I expect it will be, but we can't say for certain without him confirming it. It could be that they just took him out as a precaution and he doesn't actually have it, but there are a number of places he could be. We haven't seen him in a couple of weeks, and his tag team with Sheamus is still ongoing, but obviously he hasn't been on TV. If the plan is still to have Keith Lee working with Drew McIntyre around WrestleMania time, we will be seeing a lot more of him very soon. Michael Latini is here, says, hi, Tom. Welcome, Michael. Manny says, what a rumble. Women's was the better one. I agree. I think the women's Royal Rumble, the women's Royal Rumble was better, more cohesive, and the story told with Rhea Ripley, with Charlotte, with Bianca Belair was really very good. As well as that, we had smaller moments with Naomi and Bianca Belair. Bianca Belair was the focus throughout, but there were a number of small stories. Rhea Ripley's dominance in that match was incredible. Michael Latino says, what do you think of this Charlotte and Lacey feud? I think it's awful. Personally, I'm not too against it. It gets Lacey Evans in the spotlight, and I do feel she has a very, very bright future with the company. So I feel we're going to see a lot more of her in the future. But this feud gets her, the top name to work with. And also, it's the only way you can really get those championships away from Charlotte and Asuka. I don't think it's the best storyline they could have Charlotte doing right now, but it's certainly consistent with all the characters involved in a way that involves Ric Flair. Ed over on Twitch said, is Goldberg possibly not on Mania card and holding out as match 2 at Saudi? It's a good question. I suspect he will be at the WrestleMania card. The Saudi Arabia deal is actually extremely similar to the Goldberg deal. The Saudi Arabia deal is 2 shows per year. It doesn't matter when those shows are, and they can hold them over. The actual deal is for 20 shows over 10 years, and the WWE just decided to do 2 shows per year to break it down. That means that the fact that they didn't do 2 last year means they could technically do 4 this year and still be fitting for the terms of the contract, or in fact 6 next year. I suspect Goldberg's deal is very, very similar. So it could be that he will still be at all of the Saudi shows because they'll just get him at future ones. It depends how long his contract is, hopefully not for 10 years. Anan says, do you think WWE could have kept Edge and Strowman's entry a surprise, as there were a lack of surprise in the Rumble match? There were a lack of surprises. I think Seth Rollins was the big surprise. There was a couple of interesting ones like Carlito, for example, but I think Seth Rollins was the big surprise. And in fact, this is one of the very, very, very rare times when the favorite for the Rumble on the day does not win it. It's always interesting because you get so many people actually finding out who's going to win it, betting on it, and that's why the betting odds change. This happens every year, but it doesn't always leak out. Drew McIntyre last year and Charlotte were the favorites. Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins were the favorites beforehand. I remember Randy Orton changing to be the favorite on the day back when he won it to go on against Bray Wyatt. There were little changes, and then suddenly everything changes, and like, okay, this person is the favorite. So I don't think I can understand why people were tricked by the news that Seth Rollins was coming back into thinking that he was going to win. Edge was a genuine surprise, and I think a lot of that came down to the announcing ahead of time. They announced that Edge would be in the Rumble. Expectations lowered. You thought, oh, he's not winning it. They announced that he was going to be number 1. Expectations lowered. You thought, oh, he's not winning it. And then he won it. So I think it's actually quite good storytelling now that we've seen the whole story they're trying to tell. Strowman as well, when he was introduced, the idea was you were supposed to think, oh, he's going to win it, but that obviously is not what happened, and I get it. Michael Latino says, I'm guessing Bianca will go against Sasha at WrestleMania. Who do you think faces Asuka, Alexa, or Charlotte? Well, there were teasers of a feud with Alexa and someone else last night at the Royal Rumble, which I would very much enjoy. When it comes to Asuka, Charlotte seems the obvious choice, but I'd also like to see Rhea Ripley involved. And with that, I would be getting on to the Raw preview. So I'm just going to finish off the comments first. Noob is here. Welcome, Noob. Says, hello, Mr. Colohue. How are you doing? I'm doing very well, thank you, apart from the fact that I can barely stay awake because I was up until about 12 hours ago after watching the Royal Rumble. Now that Charlotte Flair and Asuka are no longer the women's tag team champions, where will Asuka and Flair go moving forwards? My suspicion is that they will separate. They will genuinely just separate. And that is a necessary thing because they've already done it. Now, Asuka's story has not been told yet. Whatever the story is, they didn't have anything for Asuka, so she paired up and worked with Alexa Bliss, which was very compelling. But Charlotte has been working independent of her the whole time, so I think they literally go their own ways, and we don't really see them interact until it's time for them to have a match again. Noob says Alexa and Rhea Ripley. That seems to be where we're going. That's going to be fun. Imagine those two in an elimination chamber. Ed says, and I'm glad someone brought this up because I was going to. Says WWE can now say multiple names of the multiple people who've won from number one. The WWE announce team gets stuck on that so often. Only 2 people have ever won from number one. Shawn Michaels is one of them. Who's the other one, Cole? Shawn Michaels is one of them. Great. Of course, as we know, the other one is name redacted. Anan says, your take on Alexa's booking in the Rumble match. I loved it. I genuinely loved it. I thought that was a really good way of doing it. Because the thing with Alexa is she is terrifying people. People are scared. But Randy Orton has been able to get the RKO off, and Rhea Ripley has been able to get in behind her and eliminate her from the Rumble. Could it be possible that the reason that Alexa Bliss has been able to overpower Asuka is fear on Asuka's part? Now, I don't think that's good on Asuka's part. I think they need to move on from that as quickly as possible. But Rhea Ripley ain't going to be scared of Alexa Bliss. She's not going to be scared of her. Rhea Ripley ain't scared of anyone. Anyone. Oh, I'm just excited to the idea of Rhea Ripley permanently on the main roster. I'm a huge fan of Rhea Ripley. I've mentioned this before on here. Also a huge fan of Dakota Kai. She was in this Rumble. I remember. I'm going to remember that. Gonna remember. I am going to quickly, before I get started with the Raw review, I'm going to send out a quick tweet basically saying, here's where I am, come say hi. If you are watching on YouTube, please do remember to click like on the video. That really helps me grow and is a real big help. So please remember to do that. And if you're watching on Twitch, please remember to click follow. We do Mondays and Fridays for WWE previews, as well as gaming content on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Join me on YouTube, Twitch. I preview tonight's WWE Raw. Nothing fancy. I'm not here for anything fancy. So we have no more questions coming in. Let's start previewing Monday Night Raw. Let's look at my notes so I know what to talk about. There is a lot of big news that has come out of the Royal Rumble. Now, Bianca Belair won't be on Raw because she is a SmackDown talent. We obviously won't see Roman Reigns, but there is the vast majority of things that happen do impact on Raw, at least in some way. I have talked about Rhea Ripley and Alexa Bliss. That seems like it's a match that's going to be happening, or at least a feud that's going to be happening, and that seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. So tonight, Rhea Ripley debuts on Raw. That is what's going to happen, surely. That is what I expect to see. Rhea Ripley formally debuting on Raw, in some way coming into contact with Alexa Bliss. The feud begins. Now, I have said here and on Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure, which is on the PW Torch VIP network, that the Raw Women's division has been lacking. At the minute, it is mostly tag teams, and only Alexa Bliss genuinely stood out as an individual. Now that Charlotte Flair and Asuka have lost the titles, and I imagine Charlotte and Lacey Evans will go into an individual feud, Asuka will move on to something else, or at least move on, and we will have Rhea Ripley and Alexa Bliss. Those are individuals. They are storylines, and that adds so much to the Raw Women's division. It also looks like potentially Damian Priest could be on Raw, but he also could be on SmackDown. It'd be interesting to see whether he pops up on Raw this week. Another piece of big news is what happened with Drew McIntyre, who defeated Goldberg in short order, as clean as you're going to get with Goldberg. That is a very smooth victory that he picked up, and that is a very good thing for everyone involved. I don't think anyone particularly wanted to see a long-term Goldberg. He will, of course, be sticking around. Well, sort of sticking around. He'll be back at WrestleMania and be in and out until then. But when it comes to Goldberg, he showed respect for Drew McIntyre afterwards. They essentially will reframe the story on Raw. I would imagine Drew is going to open the show, and they will reframe the story to basically say Goldberg was disrespectful because he didn't have faith in Drew McIntyre, and then Drew McIntyre showed him otherwise. What we do need is a new feud for Drew McIntyre. And here is a name I'm going to mention in 3 different segments today. Drew McIntyre could well wind up facing Randy Orton yet again. so that Randy Orton can win the championship and bait Edge into a championship match. Before I move on to Edge, let's check the comments because I have 4 new ones. Anan says, I hope you will surely remember Dakota Kai's Rumble participation this time. Again, very brief, and I think that's a real shame, but I will definitely remember how she was eliminated because Rhea Ripley threw her face first into the hardest part of the ring. The hardest part. I'll definitely remember that because I heard it and I cringed. If you watch the watch along, you'll probably remember me cringing. It was not a good moment for anyone. Manny says, I think Tori, Victoria, and Jillian looked great in the Rumble. I completely agree. They were able to show their individuality. It's when you have too many surprise entrants, it's a case of, okay, here's this person, they're in the ring. Here's this person, they're in the ring. And they're just sort of there. But everyone got to show some individuality this time. And that was a good look for me. Alicia Fox also turned up, and that was weird. Michael Latina says, it seems like all the Asuka and Alexa storyline was all for nothing if Rhea is now Alexa's feud. I get the feeling it was just a way of getting both Alexa and Asuka on TV, and they were compelling when they did so. It's a way of using the Fiend without the Fiend there. Alexa Bliss is doing great stuff, and they're essentially making up as they go along because it's good. Because people are responding well to it, they're just going to keep going. So I think they've done very well with that. But Alexa has shown she can defeat Asuka at pretty much any time. They need to separate them. Otherwise, Alexa is your next Raw Women's Champion, and Asuka is going to pretty much vanish down the pecking order again. I wouldn't like to see our current champions not take the championships into WrestleMania, because now is the time when you'll find out if WWE actually has faith in people. If you lose a title just before WrestleMania, it means that WWE do not consider you worthy of a championship on the biggest night of the year. Guinness Gamers, welcome Owen, says, hi Tom, did you enjoy the Rumbles? How'd the stream go? Sorry I couldn't be here for more. It's absolutely fine, Owen. I really appreciate anyone who even dropped in for a couple of minutes. That helps my watch time, which is a big help on YouTube, and it helped me get quite a few new followers on Twitch. That really helped me grow, getting me closer to my target. So bit by bit, we are building something over there. The stream went really well business-wise, but also the reason I did the stream as much as anything is because I usually have 2 friends who come round, we have a few drinks, we have a great time with the Rumble. It's so much better when a big return happens, when there's 2 friends in the room who really react as well. We would have gone crazy for Edge. We couldn't have that moment because of lockdown. I'm here living alone, and obviously with no formal job at the moment. Potentially, it's the last one I can watch in this house because I might not have this house much longer, depending on how Twitch goes. So it was a really nice, refreshing moment. Like, I really enjoyed it. I feel my mental health would have suffered a lot more if I wasn't able to have that moment. So yeah, a huge thank you to everyone who joined for the stream last night. I will be doing more in future because I really enjoyed it. Maybe not for 7 hours, but I will be doing more in future. So please stay tuned for those. When it comes to the Rumbles, I did really enjoy them. I think they used enough people from NXT. They were quite clever with how they used it. There was a lot of NXT influence in the women's one in particular. The final 3, after all, are all NXT alumni. The only one who hasn't been NXT Women's Champion being Bianca Belair. So it was a nice little moment there with Natalya, I believe, 4th eliminated. So they've been quite clever with them. The men's Rumble I enjoyed as well. I think having Randy Orton as a red herring the entire time was great. We knew he was going to come back. Everyone knew he was going to come back, and it was such a fluid motion to get the elimination. I was sold on Randy Orton winning it. I really was. Really was. Oh, it says the men's Rumble picked up as it went on, but definitely not as good as last year. Actually preferred women's. What about you? I did prefer the women's. I think last year's Royal Rumble for the men was perfectly built for Drew McIntyre. Brock Lesnar worked so hard and did magnificently in that match. His part in this cannot be understated. And all of that hatred that he built up went straight to Drew McIntyre as positivity. Magnificent work. I don't think you can strike lightning twice in that regard. I just don't. So I think it'll be a few years before we get to real top tier men's to that level. But that's not the fault of this men's Rumble, which was still good, but it's just very hard to beat the previous one. Ed said, any chance Carlito could get a short run of how great he looked last night? I reckon he could, yes, particularly when you look at MVP last year. I would expect Carlito is going to pop up at least a little bit more. But MVP's time back with the WWE is a lot more organic than it initially seems. I mean, I'm sure it looks like from the outset, looking back now, you're essentially watching someone make his return at the Royal Rumble, and then from there, he was immediately hired back. The Hurt Business storyline was given to him, and so on and so forth. But that is not the case. It was very much a one-off appearance, and then he got talking to people backstage. So we had a match on the Raw afterwards as he's going away, and he was done at that point. Then he got talking to people backstage, and he had another match, and he did a short bit of work with Drew McIntyre because they needed something to kill time while Brock Lesnar wasn't there. It's not cut and dry as it seems. MVP re-earned the respect of a lot of people, and he already had it because otherwise they wouldn't have invited him back anyway. If Carlito puts in the effort, he'll be there again and possibly full-time, much like MVP is, even though he wrestles quite rarely. Anan says, do you think it would be challenging for the creative team to book Alexa versus Ripley because they don't want any of them to lose so early after building so much momentum to both of them? I'm not a big fan of no one wins finishes, but this seems like the ideal time to have a no one wins finish. I think they could build this up just very similarly to how they had Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton, not this time, but not the Fiend and Randy Orton, but Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton way back when they are doing a few vignettes, having a few independent matches. I think Rhea Ripley should go on a little bit of a winning streak against people lower down the card. I'm thinking Dana Brooke, I'm thinking Mandy Rose, I'm thinking Dakota Kai gets a chance on Monday Night Raw. Just saying, Dakota Kai, quick match on Raw, working with Rhea Ripley. That'd be nice. Rhea could go on a bit of a winning streak. Alexa could hover in the background, but it depends where the Fiend is, which I will be discussing in a bit. Guinness Gamer says Rhea and Alexa at WrestleMania and then Asuka and Charlotte at Mania. I don't think Rhea Ripley and Alexa Bliss are going to make it all the way to WrestleMania, but I hope it does. I think having more women's matches on the main card is only a good thing for WrestleMania. But Asuka and Charlotte seems like it's the only storyline Asuka has going forwards, so it seems like a bit of a lock at this point. Anan says, what about having live streaming for WrestleMania just the way you did today? Very possible. I'm expecting I'll be doing live watch-alongs and watch parties for every WWE pay-per-view from here, at least WrestleMania, definitely that. And we'll see how it goes from there, to be completely honest. I'm excited about the idea. I think that's the fastest way for me to grow as well, and to get to a point where maybe I'm making a little bit of money from this, because at the moment I'm obviously making absolutely nothing. I'm living off savings and it's just whittling down and down and down. I'm very carefully living within my means. Guinness Gamer says, don't know if it was just me, but I didn't think it felt like Edge was the underdog from one. I think it would have been more effective if there was more close calls for eliminations. I think Edge basically got beat up for the entire match. I think he sold extremely well. And even at the beginning, the first three people in, you had Orton, you had Sami Zayn, you had Dolph Ziggler, and they were just beating the hell out of Edge. And then Mustafa Ali also was in there, just beating the hell out of Edge. Randy Orton was there, who Mustafa Ali should be upset with, but he decided to just beat the hell out of Edge. Not against it, it's storytelling, but I think he was made to feel like an underdog. I think it was very good seeing Christian back. That was a really positive surprise, and the way he was there to tell the Edge story. He wasn't there to relaunch his career. He wasn't there to be the center of attention. He was there to help tell the story of Edge. That's the best friend you can count on. Owen also says, do you think Christian is back full time? And if so, would you have him? What would you have him do at WrestleMania? Well, he's clearly been cleared, but I would suspect he's going to wrestle a similar amount to Edge. I know when he worked with Randy Orton previously, Christian had not been cleared at that time, but he clearly has been cleared now. So it's an interesting one. I think he could deliver. He could definitely deliver in quite a few matches. He could certainly work with Orton, but I think pretty much everyone on Raw has a storyline with Randy Orton right now. So that's a lot about how good Randy Orton is. Guinness also says, could it be Rhea and Orton against Fiend and Alexa? I had a thought about that last night, but I think it unlikely based on the fact that Rhea and Orton, I don't think they really gel. I think they could gel if Rhea was a heel, but Rhea's not a heel at the moment. So I think it'll be independent. I think essentially, with Rhea working with Alexa, that means the Fiend doesn't have to come back for a while longer. I think that gives Bray Wyatt more time off, because the expectation was we were going to see him around the Rumble as well. And Anne says, disappointed that Brian hasn't won today. I am disappointed. I'm not disappointed that Edge won. I think that's a really interesting story. And I'm not disappointed that a older figure won one Royal Rumble when a brand new star was made in another Royal Rumble. There's a toss-up, there's a trade-up. So I think that's quite telling. But I think Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns could still happen. I think Daniel Bryan will undoubtedly have something interesting to do at WrestleMania. They're not going to miss out on Daniel Bryan, but we'll wait and see. Owen says, what feud would you have Damian Priest come in with? Sami Zayn. I would definitely have Damian Priest come in against Sami Zayn as sort of a litmus test. In the same way people come in against Baron Corbin. I don't think it's necessary per se, but there's a number of ways they could do it. Damian Priest, for me, should be going against Bobby Lashley from the off, but Matt Riddle's already going against Bobby Lashley. It's one of those. As a follow-up to the previous question, were you shocked like me when Bryan went out? I was shocked, but I think as we got closer to it, especially after seeing Seth Rollins come in, I was a little less surprised. By the end of it, I was feeling like Randy Orton was a lock until the big surprise at the end. This is why I try to avoid spoilers and why I'm really quite enjoying not reporting much news anymore, because it means people are less likely to DM me who is winning the Royal Rumble. For example, there was a wrestling journalist ahead of a quite prominent site who was DMing people, okay, here's who's going to win, if asked whether they were going to win. I'm never going to ask. I like the surprise. Guinness Gamer says Christian versus AJ Styles appeals to me. That could be interesting. I think with WrestleMania being 2 nights, they can afford to make both nights 4 hours at most, but they would struggle if they go too far. So if you've got, for example, Christian versus Styles, you've got the big championship matches, you've got a Goldberg match in there, you've got something for each of the women's championships, you're already quite full. But then if you add Christian Styles, you add Rhea Ripley versus Alexa Bliss, it starts to get even more bloated. So they have to be careful with that. Ed would like to see Miz and Morrison versus Damian Priest. You're a brave man. I mean, it's not something I would personally expect to see. But if that's what does it for you, all power to you. I am wondering what they're going to do because they do still have that briefcase. We could end up with Edge versus The Miz. It's possible. Continuing on with the WWE Raw preview, the question I want to ask next is where's The Fiend and will we see him soon? As I have mentioned, I believe looking at Rhea Ripley and Alexa Bliss, this allows them to have a feud not involving The Fiend and suggests that Randy Orton will be doing something else, at least for a little while The Fiend recovers or whatever it may be. So we could see a return to Randy Orton against Edge. I've mentioned earlier that we could see Drew McIntyre taking on Randy Orton again and Randy Orton taking the championship back to face Edge at WrestleMania. That is certainly something they could do. But Randy Orton really is woven through everything right now. Randy Orton could potentially be involved with Drew McIntyre, with Edge, with Christian, who he has a long history with The Fiend, with Alexa Bliss, and, as a matter of fact, with Rhea Ripley by extension. That is 7 different storylines that Randy Orton is currently, in some manner, involved in. That's interesting to me. I think he's been a very integral character, but it does mean we can't have him feud with Edge and The Fiend, or can we? I think we are going to build up to, at Elimination Chamber, another Randy Orton versus Edge match. Just another one to finish that off. Then The Fiend will come back to build towards Orton versus The Fiend at WrestleMania, whereas Edge will go on to either McIntyre or Reigns. I suspect Reigns will be his choice. But I think he has to get the monkey off his back, as it were, and deal with Randy Orton first. When The Fiend returns, I don't think it'll be tonight. It's not impossible, but I don't think it'll be tonight. I think it'll be closer to Elimination Chamber, depending on whether Edge and Randy Orton do engage. Now, Edge will also be there tonight announcing his intended next steps. So we'll learn at least a little bit about what he wants to do next. It's been a while since we've seen Edge. He tends to do quite long promos, and I expect we'll get something very similar, to the Raw after WrestleMania last year, when Edge and Randy Orton were involved. I don't think we'll see him tag team up, but it's a real shame. I'd love a run of Rated RKO again, but I suspect we'll see Edge, we'll see Randy Orton, we'll see Christian. Maybe a teaser of The Fiend, but I don't think that's going to happen. And then we may also see Drew McIntyre. So this could be a very, very busy segment, and I think Edge is going to essentially show hop a little bit between Raw and SmackDown. I hope he turns up at least at some point in NXT. I'd like it. I think it'd pop a rating. against AEW. The NXT locker room, unfortunately, have been struggling to defeat AEW recently. So I think Edge is the way they can do that. But Edge is in a beautiful position right now to do pretty much whatever he wants. Let's have a look at the comments that we've got coming in. Guinness Gamer says Miz versus Morrison for the briefcase at Mania. I don't see it personally. John Morrison, since he came back, has just been in a tag team with Miz. He doesn't seem to want to work independently, and I kind of get it. Alan says Damian Priest was very impressive this Rumble. Yes, he was. Do you think apart from Ripley's Rumble debut, this debut was best as compared to other NXT stars' debut at Rumble in recent times? There's a number of people who did very well in their Rumble debut. Rhea Ripley several years ago was extremely good, and this was a brilliant follow-up. But I think Aleister Black, Pete Dunne, when they were still in NXT, did very well as well. I can't look past Adam Cole, who was in the Rumble moderately briefly, but made a big impact when he did and got a really big pop. So I'm not sure this is the most impressive, apart from obviously Ripley's appearance, but I do think it's up there, and they need to work on it immediately. They need to decide whether he's going to Raw, SmackDown very quickly, and just do something with it. I personally suspect he's going to be going to Raw. Ed also raised a good point. Bianca Belair had a great debut in the Royal Rumble last year, probably better than Rhea Ripley and up top, as it were. Shayna as well eliminated a lot of people, but was in for a very brief amount of time, so it's easy to sort of forget that. I do tend to forget how many people she eliminated. It was most of the field. As Michael also says, Bianca last year was in the Rumble when she was in NXT, and she made a very memorable impact. And really, in 2 Rumbles, she's probably been in nearly 2 hours when you consider how much time she's been doing. So she may be the Iron Woman of all Iron Women. The Iron Womanist? The Ironist? No, that just sounds like she does a lot of ironing. That sounds sexist. I think she'll just have to go with the longest. I don't know. But I'm sure they'll brand it in some way. What else is left to talk about? We have new women's tag team champions, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. It looks like they will be working with Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose. Again, they have been building towards that for a while. And really, they've been acting as the tag team champions. They've been pushing a tag team feud while Charlotte's been working with Lacey, while Asuka's been working with Bliss. It's like they never lost the titles, to be completely honest. It looks like we'll get Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. We may get Lacey Evans and Peyton Royce at some point, but I think that would be a very short match because it would be 2 heels versus 2 heels. So I don't think we're going to see too much of that. But they are the new tag team champions, and I expect to see some sort of celebration, maybe even a rematch. Also, Shayna Baszler eliminated Shotzi Blackheart. So it's very possible that we could see Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax go down to NXT to defend those tag titles against Shotzi Blackheart and a tag team partner who I believe is currently in the Women's Dusty Classic. Now, honestly, I can't remember the name. It's not there in my head at the moment, so please do correct me if you can remember who it is. But I think it sends a very interesting message that the winner of the Dusty Classic might be taking on Baszler and Jax. I think that's good. That'd be very good. And they will have earned it. Definitely. And that'll be on NXT to try and pop that rating. Asuka now, unburdened by the Women's Tag Team Championship, which she never really did anything with, is free and clear. She has no opponent lined up. If Alexa Bliss is going to work with Rhea Ripley, what's next for Asuka? No one, apparently. There's a number of people who had good moments. I think we could see something with Lana now. We've already seen a title defense against Lana, but there was a potential tag team with Lana. It was brief, but it was there. Lana eliminated Nia Jax from the Women's Royal Rumble, so I'd like to see the match, Asuka and Lana against Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. I think we could at least have the match and then go from there. And of course, this would mean that Charlotte is free and clear to go and talk to Lacey Evans and work out what's going on there. Thank you very much, Michael, who says Shotzi is tagging with Ember. That would be a very good tag team match. Ooh, I'm a bit out. It says 90 minutes, 12 seconds for Bianca in 2 Rumbles. Still incredible. Not actually approaching 2 hours. Thank you for correcting me on that one. I have no more questions. I have nothing left for my Raw preview. Let's see what other websites are pushing for the preview. A bit about that. Of course. Bobby Lashley and Matt Riddle. Now, I think it's interesting that Seth Rollins beat the holy hell out of Matt Riddle last night at the Royal Rumble, but Seth Rollins is on SmackDown, so we won't see any continuation there. Bobby Lashley had an extremely good showing, just an extremely good showing. So I suspect Bobby Lashley and Riddle will now be ramped up, and we will get that US title match sooner rather than later. In addition, I'd like to see Braun Strowman get involved in this particular division, because Strowman versus McIntyre certainly could happen, but Strowman's not coming away with a win. I think having Lashley versus Strowman is the way to go. And Lashley versus Strowman, their last feud, really launched them both again. It really did. Anan says, do you think Rollins' first feud would be against Bryan, the way he eliminated Bryan, and also he came back again in Messiah Avatar, so he would be heel for now? Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Having Rollins versus Bryan, it's a feud that has happened before, but hasn't happened for a very long time. And I think you just get tremendous wrestling matches. One thing Rollins and Bryan always deliver is a tremendous wrestling match. So I think that would be a great return feud. For Seth, Ed says, did you get to watch the Yoko documentary yet? Once again, unfortunately, no, but I've seen some clips and it seems like it is very, very emotional. I'm interested to hear what's said. That seems to be everything I've got for now. We have no more questions coming in. I think people might be getting a little sick of this old face, and I get that. I was on for 7 hours last night. One of the reasons I haven't watched the documentary yet is because I have not done much sleeping, to be completely honest. Between these streams, it's why you haven't got a formal Royal Rumble review video, and it's why you got a Royal Rumble review at the beginning of this. If you have been watching on YouTube, please do remember to click like. Please do remember to pop over to my Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Tom Colohue, and give us a follow there, because live content will be moving to Twitch once we reach a certain threshold. And we are currently 68% of the way there. So live content like these previews will be moving to Twitch. If you have not already gone over there, made an account and followed, please remember to do so. I will be live on Twitch tomorrow with a Football Manager stream that is gaming content at the same time. That will last for at least 2 hours. Live on Thursday with Bloodborne, which will last at least 2 hours again, but Bloodborne tends to go a little bit longer because it's just a game that once you reach a certain point, you have to continue until you finish that point. And then Friday, once again, I will be here for a WWE SmackDown preview. I am also considering, because of how well the watch along went last night, watch along or watch party content for Raw and SmackDown. So please, if you are interested in that, do let me know, because it would be beneficial to me to know that you want it before I start doing it. I also have to send a quick thank you out to Northern Bear and John Bear, who sent me raids last night as well. If I look at my stream manager too, looking at the raids that came in, that Matt 85 sent a party of 9 in, Northern Bear 25 sent a party of 14. I really do appreciate it. Thank you to both of them as well. That is a huge benefit to me and really helped me grow, and I'm so grateful to them for giving me the chance to do that. I followed you both back. Northern Bear, I believe I already followed you. That Matt was a new one on me, but I am sure I will be sending people to you once I've developed my audience a little bit more. It'll be a nice rotation between the friendos, Stephen Larson, Cultaholic, Adam Cole, Robotron, of course, I'll be sending people to. A big fan of his work, and I think he needs more viewership, to be completely honest. He's got a lot, he needs more. So there'll be more of that in the future. Michael Latina says, I'd definitely be interested if you were to do a Raw and SmackDown watch along. Thank you for letting me know that. I will be considering it. I'll maybe do a few trials and see what happens, because right now I'm entirely nocturnal, so I might as well watch Raw. Thank you to everyone who has watched. Thank you to everyone who has commented. Thank you to everyone who's clicked like, subscribed, or followed on Twitch. I've been Tom Colohue, and a huge thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy Monday Night Raw.